Divine ecstasy was here first. Joy was here well before suffering. So suffering came lately. It was not the early experience of Adam and Eve. It was a later moment. And it was a later moment that was brought about by the fact that they wanted to know more. They looked to another source for their learning. They looked to the prince of this world to tell them what they needed to know. And so they listened. And they didn't go back to their source. They didn't go back to the garden to check it out, to see how to understand this new teaching. And if they had, and we can only speculate, I can only think of things, it probably would have turned out differently. It would have turned out in a way that the cooperative and sympathetic nature of the beings of the divine hierarchy would have set them straight, would have shifted their gaze so that they were no longer looking at what they knew or didn't know. And I think that's the essence of this struggle we're in today, because we are looking at what we don't know. We are looking at our suffering. And that concentration on suffering and the acquisition of knowledge really kind of gets in the way of our connection to the divine, to an understanding of our connection with the divine in the context of our calling. So we are questioning our calling, and we are saying to ourselves that we need to know more. And that's based on, as I can understand it, the connection to personality. So if and when we can set aside personality, we can return again to the sympathetic and cooperative relationships that exist in the divine hierarchy, and we can get some help. We can get ourselves reoriented, refocused on what's the most important thing, which is the joy of the divine hierarchy, that divine ecstasy, the divine ecstasy that was here first. So when we fall prey to our personality and we suffer, we look to know more. We look to escape from our situation by knowing. And there's nothing wrong with knowing. I mean, knowing is great stuff, but I think it gets in the way of the experience of the divine ecstasy, that joy of being alive, the expansion of creation. Vital life force, that is, the psychic energy which powers the universe. It is the expansion of the universe, the cosmos, that is why we're here. To further creation, to add our bit to the power of creation. And what we need to know is there. So when we seek to know more about what's here and our individual concerns of personality, we really shift our gaze away from the connection that is most vital. And that's the purpose of meditation and reflection and contemplation, to learn to refocus our gaze. That's why our angel is close by and ready to help us shift our gaze so that we can reconnect with the sympathetic and cooperative relationship we have in the divine hierarchy. It's just not going to do well if we concentrate on our personality. We're not going to do well if we concentrate on our suffering. I mean, you can't sometimes avoid it, but you cannot look at it. You cannot fall prey to the wantings that come from spending time with it, because that's what will happen. That's what happened to Adam and Eve. They had a wanting that was different from their calling. They abandoned their calling to pay attention to their wanting. And so here we are. We are suffering. We are suffering a lot. And it's what we have to do in order to refocus our gaze, to shift our allegiances, to shift our concentration, our meditation, and our reflections back to our calling and back to the connection with the divine hierarchy. And we do that through our angel, that ever vital connection that allows us to enter into a world that is not naturally where we're supposed to be right now. And what I mean is it's an etheric world. You could maybe understand it by understanding that right now we are working on our resurrection body. We are developing our resurrection body. The work we do is about that physicality. Well, I guess it's physical. It's a manifested resurrection body. And that's the body that's going to take a full presence in the divine hierarchy. Well, that's how I understand it. So that's where our teaching comes from. I know it's really important sometimes to gather with those who share our beliefs, but sometimes that gathering gets a little torqued, and we end up back to wanting, more powerful teaching, wanting to go deep. And you can see how that reflects very similarly to what it was that was the wanting of Adam and Eve, to go deep. And indeed, they did. But I'm saying let's step out of the deep and let's step into an angelic understanding of our calling in the divine hierarchy that allows us to shift our gaze not on our suffering, which is naturally supposed to be there. It's what we do with our orientation to suffering that is the great challenge. So that's why I work hard on my meditations, so that I'm understanding that I am in fact the source of my own understandings. I have to open my mind up. I have to open up all of me to understand them, the beings of the divine hierarchy. So that's where my concentration is. And when I think about, shifting my gaze and, wandering around from temple to church, seeking new understandings, sometimes that takes us away from what we need to be doing, which is giving everything we can to our meditations, to our angel, to our contemplations, to our connection with the divine hierarchy, because that's where we can again, with certainty, participate in the expansion of the cosmos. Amen.